All right, here we are at this convention in Orlando, Florida. Um, the guy that's speaking there right now, he's one of the few, and I do mean very few, that I had a great deal of empathy and sympathy towards, due to the fact that he knew what was on the line, but at the same time, I've lost some respect for him because he's still rubbing shoulders with the old chief and commander, which is Donald J. Trump, knowing that it was Donald J. Trump that that manifested what took place January the 6th in 2021, right here in the United States of America, pertaining to the invasion of the Capitol building. All along, I've said that Donald Trump, his administration, had done some magnificent, marvelous things. In other words, I couldn't just write him off in saying that none of his work that his cabinet members performed was all in vain, because a lot of stuff that they done was good. So if you don't mind, to my viewers, please watch the remaining part of this pertaining to the Secretary of State, I believe it was, right there.
Most of the liberals and most of the folks on T-Bite still won't acknowledge that ridding the world of an America hitting terrorists was a good thing. This is fantasy. Look, we drew a red line when the Syrians gassed children and women. And we told them, don't do that again. And when they crossed it, President Trump ordered 70 plus beautiful American-made Tomahawk missiles to let them know that we weren't going to allow them to kill women and children. America.
Now, once more, that's a good thing. That's a good thing that somebody had enough zeal that they was willing to intervene and not allow for that type of atrocities to happen to a group of people on the other side of the pond.
America first takes real courage. Takes a Secretary of State willing to walk into a room and tell it like it is, and a president who will have his back. We had that. Speaking of backs, I hear President Biden saying, America's back. Back to what? So, wait, back to pallets of cash to the Ayatollah so he can build missiles that threaten us? Back to apologizing when Iranians tell our soldiers and sailors to take to their knees at gunpoint? Back to President Biden killing pipeline? Back to all the things that put America at risk? Back to supporting a pipeline in Europe that'll create European jobs? This is not where we want to go back to any time at all. And we certainly don't want to go back to letting China have trade deals that kill our jobs right here in America. We can't afford it. It's not the right thing, and we don't have to do it. We must be bold, and we must always put America first. We spent a lot of time talking about being canceled. I was really happy that this is being aired on television, not canceled, at least for the moment. We worked tirelessly with great success to deliver on our values, American values that have made this such a special, unique nation. Look, this country was built on what our founders understood, and then the Bill of Rights that came behind that Constitution. They built a nation recognizing that our rights come from our Creator and not from any government. Our union becomes more perfect every time we defend our sovereignty and we defend our borders. And I'm proud that we are the most pro-life administration in the history of the United States of America. It was my job to deny that any taxpayer dollars from any hardworking American ever went to perform an abortion any place in the world, and we promoted adoption everywhere and always. And don't forget, too, President Trump appointed an awful lot of judges that understand the words life and liberty and that words that have real meaning.
And once more, these things that he's talking about right now are hitting right on the head pertaining to nailing it. But at the same time, do you think that the Republican Party is going to admit, pertaining to their chief and commander, that wanted to snuggle or cuddle up to the Saudi crown prince in knowing that now the truth has finally come out that he was and did in fact plan on taking that reporter and cutting him up in little bitty pieces and carrying him out in basically bags or suitcases? Did anybody discuss the fact that it's a strong possibility that the very love affair that Donald Trump had with North Korea pertaining to Kim Jong-un, or whatever his name is, could have very well been the perpetrator that planted or sabotaged the China government by distributing a virus called the coronavirus that has now wreaked havoc upon the whole planet, including here in America, to the point that we have lost over 500,000 people in just 1 year because of it. Has anybody discussed some of these other deep fundamental problems that Donald Trump took on towards ripping the children away from parents? And to this day, they still have something like, I think, 200 children that they have no idea where their parents are, towards putting families back together again. So yes, they talk about the good things, and that's fine. That's all fine and dandy whenever they talk about some of the good things that they believed in and some of the things that they stood for. But whenever we get asphyxiated upon some of these speeches that they make, and it doesn't matter if they're making it today, they're in Orlando, Florida, at this CPAC meeting that they have prior to an election. It doesn't matter if they're discussing it today or tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. People need to look at all the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help us God, whenever they get up there and spew off their successes. Because not everything that the Trump administration done was in fact successful. Not everything. There's no doubt that I stood with the birth control, the right for life issues. There's no doubt we got a problem pertaining to our border in all these sanctuary cities that allow for all these illegals to come to and basically have an umbrella of protection under them as long as they stay in that particular area. There's no doubt that a lot of the stuff here in America needed to be cleaned up. But there's also no doubt that Donald Trump had overstepped his boundaries pertaining to the Ukrainian deal, and also pertaining to not acknowledging to the American people quick enough and soon enough towards how lethal that the coronavirus was, to the degree that we have seen massive casualties on the count of not just carelessness, but reckless endangerment. Whenever it reaches the point that our own people can't protect the people that put them in power, then they no longer need to be in power. And that is whenever you need to persist in putting other people in power that can diversify around the people's safety and security for all of us.
I worked with the Mexican government, my counterpart, Foreign Minister of Mexico and the President, to secure our borders. We worked hard, too, to make sure that drugs and other things didn't traffic across that border, and that meant, too, protecting your right to own firearms. Our Second Amendment matters. It builds communities, it builds strong families, and to make sure each of us has the right to defend ourselves precisely as our founders intended. You know, I'm always stunned. I always watch liberals pretend to care about the poor, and then they side with the union bosses against the workers. They pretend to stand for children while kids in Democrat-led inner cities aren't in front of computers like they think they are. They're struggling to figure out how to stay safe from drug lords and how to get a meal. That's not good leadership. It's not America First leadership. It's not taking care of those people you're charged with protecting. And we need to get every one of our children back in school. And we need to get them back in now. I was a soldier about 25, 30 years ago, and about 100 pounds ago, too. And when I hear Democrats say they want a strong America, I know that they are working to undermine it. Sadly, mark my word, they're going to gut the defense budget that we worked so hard to build. They'll do it to pay for their Green New Deal. It kind of makes me mad, right? They're going to trade Army green for AOC green. That is a bad, bad trade. And as I said before, our young men and women, we don't want to put them in harm's way. We don't want them to go to war. But when we're weak at home, when we don't stand up for our military, the risk of war increases when deterrence fades. We cannot let that happen. And they want to defund the police while they barricade the Capitol. This is backwards. And canceling our freedom to assemble peacefully while censoring our communications online is completely antithetical to what our founders understood about America. You know, it reminds me, when I headed off to West Point, my parents couldn't afford to fly to New York. I grew up in Southern California. So they left me at the airport. My mother was happy and all kinds of feelings. She was my mother was a cigarette smoking high school graduate who was the most decent and toughest woman I've ever met. She said, Mike, she pulled me aside. I think she didn't want my dad to hear this. She said, Michael, I know you're a grinder. Don't ever let them wear you down. Wear them down. I've never forgotten what my mom told me that day. We'll all remember it. Keep grinding, keep championing American values. One more story. The smartest, best sea officer that I ever came to know. He worked closely with me as a former Air Force Special Operations officer. I'd ask him about someone who was working on our team, and I'd say, what do you think of him, or what do you think of her? And he'd say, love that guy, pipe hitter. You know what he meant? He meant that person got stuff done. They were a grinder. They kept banging away. You all know these 4 years are going to test us. I need each of you to be a pipe hitter. Get stuff done. Keep grinding. Be a pipe hitter. Be a pipe hitter. Be a pipe hitter at church. Right? Be a pipe hitter at church. Be a pipe hitter at your PTA meeting. Don't let them bring crazy into your classrooms. Be a pipe hitter at your VFW. Lead the team to continue to support our military warriors. Be a pipe hitter. Be a pipe hitter when they tell you they're closing the mine or the factory because of some green vision. Keep it open. President Reagan, a real pipe hitter. President Reagan got stuff done, and he once said, if we lose freedom here, there is no place to escape. This is the last stand on earth. I saw that. I saw that as your Secretary of State as I traveled all around the world. And I am confident that he was right. I am confident that the American star will shine across the heavens so long as we keep a proper understanding of our God-given rights at the center of who we are, and we keep up our quest to secure our freedom for our own people and for all of mankind. I'll be with you in the fight. God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
That was the former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, of course, served in the Trump administration, speaking there before a very welcoming crowd at at CPAC, certainly hitting some of the highlights that conservatives traditionally care about: the economy, an increase in jobs, successes that he felt he had had with the Trump administration during the 4 years of the Trump administration, secure borders, American energy, getting kids back in school. He talked about being pro-life, really kind of hitting some of the things that you would expect him to hit there before that particular crowd, Griff.
Yeah, and talking about America first is right for America, Molly. He clearly embracing the policies of former President Donald Trump. But then we also did hear a little bit about Grandpa Earl in his sort of campaign speech. It makes you wonder if he's eyeing a political future and what that brings. And I thought what was really fascinating, Molly, listening to those remarks, was that the loudest applause came at two times. Once about abortion, which is an issue near and dear to this crowd, but also the Abraham Accords, and it really put a lot of distance between himself and his past administration and the incoming Biden administration.
Yeah, and he did, of course, hit the incoming Biden administration, and Biden as well a little bit, talking about the defense budget, where money will be going, saying it shouldn't be going to the Green New Deal, it should stay in defense. It also argued that appeasing Iran would be a disaster. So a few couple ticks there at the current administration as it comes in, but really a look ahead and touting many of the accomplishments of the Trump administration. So we just had a chance to listen, and now we'll take it back to the Journal editorial report.
Hidden in.
Millions of us have simply.
We start hearing some of those people who were against him called out by name. We already heard it from his son, Donald Trump Jr. yesterday. He had Liz Cheney in his sights, the number 3 House Republican who voted to impeach former President Trump several weeks ago. She's someone who still has been very vocal about the role that she thinks that Trump should, or rather should not, play in this party going forward. Of course, there are many other Republicans who see his grip on the party. They may not like him, but people like Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, they still say that they would support the former president if he were the nominee in 2024. A lot of time, though, between now and then to see if that's actually a decision that these folks have to make.
I got to tell you, I find it curious that Mike Pompeo would be telling the audience, reminding them that the New York Times called him the worst Secretary of State of all time. But I don't know. I didn't like the speech.
That's a badge of honor, though, here at a conference like this, Alex.
Okay, well, I guess if you interpret it that way, I wonder if our viewers think that as we have played that for them. But thank you very much, Allie. Joining me now, Gabby Orr, White House reporter for Politico, and Sonam Sheth, political correspondent for Business Insider. Ladies, good to see you both. Gabby, we'll go to you first here. Your colleague, Tara Palmieri at Politico Playbook, is reporting today 3 people close to Trump say he's stewing anew over Kevin McCarthy. It's become so frequent that his advisors think the House Minority Leader may be in for a public reprimand. That's even after the powwow at Mar-a-Lago, where McCarthy tried to patch things up after he denounced Trump for the violence on January 6th. What more do you know about this? I mean, is this the preview of what we might hear tomorrow?
Well, we're definitely going to be looking to see if the president brings up McCarthy's name in his speech.
Well, sure, he's going to denounce it. Sure, he's not going to admit to it. Sure, he's going to point his finger at other agencies that should have done this or should have done that. He's not going to stand up and admit in accountability issues that he was the one that manifested. He was the one, the very core of origin of how that ever took place to begin with, the way that he kept hyping up the people and in using violent tactic terms. He's not going to get up there and tell the American people the truth. And for that Kentucky senator to crawfish the way that he did, since he now knows that Donald Trump is serious about crawling back into the ring, it speaks volumes about how crummy and how full of hypocrisy that these people, that the people have elected, are supposed to be up there in the people's interest. And instead of them being in the people's interest, they're up there for a bunch of thieves and thugs' interest pertaining to people that wound up storming the White House with a bunch of battle Confederate flags while they beat various people, and some of them even to death. Some of them lost eyes. Some of them had heart attacks. Some of them had to commit. Some of them wound up committing suicide because they felt like that they had let down the very department that they had come on board towards supporting. And I just can't believe that he's still hiding in plain view the way that he is towards thinking that people ain't on to him. And there are a certain amount of people out there that's not on to him. They're just as blinded as he is, pertaining to Donald Trump. As I said a while ago, he did do some good things by bringing out some good points during his administration that we needed to all look at, regardless whether it was Republicans or Democrats. But he was too gung-ho. He went too far, just like ripping the children away from the families down on the border. And other things that he embarked upon pertaining to the Saudi prince and Kim Jong-un, the North Korea leader. There was lots of things that Donald Trump done that was an asset to the American people, but there was also lots of things that Donald Trump done that was a liability to the American people, especially whenever it come to them promptly, professionally telling the American people of how lethal that this coronavirus really was, other than it being a flu or a type of flu that now we're realizing compasses the flu probably, the way that I understand it, probably 3-1. In other words, this coronavirus is 3 times more harder to get over. It's 3 times more easier to catch, and it's 3 times more lethal if you do catch it, if you got certain pre-existing health issues. They didn't explain all that to the American people whenever they was all debating towards whether or not they wanted to wear a mask or not. They wasn't explaining all that to the general public here in America whenever people was getting sick the way that the was in New York City and out in California, people basically dying by the groves. They didn't explain all that. There has to be accountability. And I realize nobody's perfect. And I realize no administration is perfect. But whenever you have purposely not done your job as far as dereliction of duty, and then you won't admit that you didn't do your job, now you have compounded it towards adding insult to injury. There's always going to be a certain amount of people out there that's going to follow after Donald Trump. Just like Christ said that if the blind lead the blind shall also leadeth off into the ditch. Jesus knew, even during the time that he was walking and talking amongst us, that there was certain people out there that was going to be attracted to darkness. Darkness attracts darkness. Birds of a feather flock together. And these type of entities will be the type of entities that will drive, condor, manipulate others in following after the same path. It's not just the American people need to wake up to Mr. Donald John Trump, but the world in general, because he was heading the planet, as far as I am concerned, and this is my opinion, he was heading the planet into a doomsday scenario that could have actually been devastating, not just for the continental United States, but for the whole planet. He was constantly denying, a climate denier. He wasn't participating in none of the futuristic events pertaining to how that we can better the carbon dioxide going up into the lower as well as the upper atmosphere. And there was just so many things that he was not hitting on all the cylinders on a better, not only the lives of the American people, but better in the lives of the planet. So people can be their own judge in how they feel about Donald J. Trump, and I'm sure they will. Just like they can be pre-selective in judging how that they feel about the Democrat Party pertaining to the Biden and the Harrison ticket. It's really sad whenever you have a country that has become this polarized to the point that it takes so long to get anything accomplished up in the White House or up in the Capitol building. It takes so long with all the bickering and debating and by the time they get through finally passing the not the workman's comp, but the minimum wage deal, instead of needing to pass it for $15 an hour, by that time it will probably already in flux that instead of asking for $15 an hour, they probably should be asking for $18 an hour. Why do they want to grind? Why do they want to halt? Why do they want to stop the movement of creativity and progressiveness? I'm going to tell you why. It's simply because they do not have the right image. They do not have the right vision for not just the American people, but for the world. Now, once more, that's my opinion. It didn't cost you nothing. May God have mercy on all of us. God bless America and shalom.
Speech at CPAC tomorrow. There's a long list of other Republicans with whom he has beef at the moment, who we might go after from the CPAC stage. Of course, Mitch McConnell is one of them. Liz Cheney is a big one. And she's really the reason right now that President Trump is so privately aggravated by Kevin McCarthy's actions. Every single time that Congresswoman Cheney speaks out about former President Trump, criticizes him, has something negative to say about him, he is reminded that Kevin McCarthy was one of the top Republicans pushing to keep her in her position as conference chair of House Republicans. And so it is something that he's been griping about privately and to his advisors and aides, but whether it actually makes it onto his CPAC speech tomorrow, which is really going to be the first time that we hear from him publicly since shortly before Joe Biden's inauguration, that's an outstanding question.
Yeah, for sure. This conference on him is our first and certainly preliminary preview of what the 2024 campaign and field could look like. But what is the message coming from Republicans? Or is it just who can be the most like Trump?
Yeah, that's really the million-dollar question right now. I mean, I think we saw multiple people who appeared at CPAC yesterday saying that it was really TPAC, right? To sort of underscore how the party is really, it's not the Republican Party anymore, it's the party of Trump. And so what we saw yesterday, what we've seen today, and what we will certainly see tomorrow is all of these potential 2024 hopefuls jockeying to see who can make themselves the most like Trump. Now, the million-dollar question, obviously, is what this means for 2024, because if Trump decides to run again, that's going to pose a conundrum for people like Ted Cruz and Senator Josh Hawley, who've really thrown all of their weight behind him and who may find themselves in the unenviable position of trying to separate themselves from him in 2024. And so if he decides to run again, it could be a rude awakening, for the Cruzes and the Hawleys and the Tom Cottons of the party as well.
Yeah, but Gabby, to that point, Donald Trump running again in 2024, how much speculation is there that he's actually not going to do that, but he's going to use it as an excuse right now for campaign fundraising and do a very good job of doing so, given the millions he's raised even thus far. But then at the end, he's probably going to say, oh, I'm not going to do it, and pave the way for somebody else. I mean, is that a realistic expectation?
Well, there's definitely two different camps of thinking sort of in his orbit right now. There's those advisors and aides who think that he's going to spend the next couple of years at least teasing out a 2024 run, kind of dangling that out there in front of his supporters just to keep interest in him and in his Make America Great Again movement. But then there's certainly...
I'm going to weigh in on this real quick, and then I'm going to let it go on their conversation that they're having right now. Naturally, he's going to have to tickle and I use the word tickle as in the frame mind of teasing. They use the word teasing. I'm going to use the word tickle. He's going to have to tickle certain individuals that he has bamboozled money from. He has squandered, stolen their financial funds from, to make it really look like it's legitimate towards him hanging in there and possibly actually running in 2024. If he didn't do that, it would be a given. Listen to me. It would be a given that he had bamboozled or swindled over $150 million from the American people after the election was over with, before the inauguration day. He had already gotten over $150 million for campaign funds. So if he does not give the appearances that he's contemplating, concentrating on running again, then it will be an automatic given. Yeah, that old fart, all he done was swindle a bunch of people out of a bunch of money. And as far as I'm concerned, he should be labeled as a swindler. He should not only be labeled as a swindler, but he should be labeled as a tyrant. He should be labeled as not just an enemy of the state, but an enemy to the United States, of all the states, pertaining to the insurrection that he mysteriously manifested in a slick, sly way, to the point that it didn't look like that he was actually ahead of that uprising, but in reality, we all know that he was. We all know that Donald J. Trump was the very one that created a stumbling block. It was an entrapment technique that a great deal of people walked directly into January the 6th, towards thinking that they was doing something for the betterment of the will of the people. But instead of doing something for the will of the people, all they was doing was being ambushed, hijacked, in bettering Donald Trump and Donald Trump's ideology. It wasn't about the party. It wasn't about the whole group pertaining to both parties. It wasn't pertaining to the United States. It was only pertaining to Donald J. Trump. What Donald J. Trump foreseen towards him not liking Biden and the Democrat Party for whatever reason, I'm sure he's got multiples, but he basically swindled. He basically brainwashed a certain amount of people that created this atmosphere of a stumbling block. That's what a stumbling block is. You have done something purposely to where now your brother or your sister will stumble over. And that's exactly what he done. He created an atmosphere that a great deal of people fell for, and now a great deal of people are going to have to pay the consequences towards going up to the White House for whatever reason, regardless whether they was mad, regardless whether they was trying to make a point, regardless whether they thought that they was demonstrating their patriotic duties. For whatever reason, now those are going to be the people that's going to have to pay the consequences for what went on January the 6th, why somebody like Donald Trump remains like the old fox that's trying to hide in plain view. But in reality, we can all see through what he done and why he done it. The intent was there. The motive was there. And any good prosecuting attorney will be able to take this, chop it up in little bitty pieces, and prove to their peers, prove to the jury that this is the very thing that Donald Trump done and why he done it. This was what motivated him. This is what his incentives was, and we see the consequences of towards the death of, what is it, 5 people. Some people got desperately injured, besides the property damage that occurred at the White House, besides the psychological effect that it had, not only with the people here in the United States, but other partnerships of people across the pond. And yes, there will be certain psychological damage of that, in which what happened towards people that was already skeptical of wanting to deal with the United States, that now will say, nah, we're going to wave off. The United States has got too many issues. They're not stable enough. They're this, they're that, whatever. And it will actually hurt us more than it will help us. Like I said, it's more of a liability than it is a compliment or something in our better interest. Thank you. Good luck to all of us as we end. Shalom.